What's the hardest thing you've ever had to say no to? Do you love me? Oh dear. Gonna have to pretend I didn't hear that. Greg. After a string of shitty relationships, I made a promise to myself to not get involved with a woman for at least 6 months. 2 months later, in the pub with some friends, and a very attractive woman starts coming on to me in a big way. I had to say no to my promise to myself. Wife left me and took my 4-year-old daughter 2 years ago. Divorce was final a year ago. The hardest no I have to do, sometimes daily, is when my daughter asks if I can stay when I leave her mom's house. Rips my heart out every time. Drunken sex with the girl I love. I said no because I knew she'd regret it. We had sex the next day when she was sober. Hey. Happy ending. My old boss in response to an offer to come back to the job I had left a month prior. I really liked that job and I liked the industry. I was also getting ready to start a new, much cooler role in the company. My wife didn't like the area we lived in. I wasn't a huge fan of it either, and wanted to move somewhere else. I ended up finding a job closer to her hometown and we moved there. I absolutely hate this job. I hate the area. Moving also meant giving up on a house that we bought as an investment. That was 3 months ago. I still get messages from my old boss and a few of the other managers at the old plant telling me that the door is open if I wanted to come back. It's getting harder to keep telling them no. A salesperson who tried to sell Oxford encyclopedias in front of my house. He was nearly on the verge of tears for some reason and he desperately tried to convince me to buy the set. I calmly told him that I have Wikipedia and Google for learning anything I wanted and I don't need them. An extremely attractive patience please for 6. She was underage and my patient. I like my job. And hate jail. That as well. I had to say no to staying in Japan. My wife was unhappy with the job market for expats and wanted to come back to the States. I really wanted to stay. But I like my wife more than Japan. So we left. He likes his wife more than Japan. Well, I do. I'm not in love with Japan. That's just creepy. Job offer in San Francisco that paid $110,000 a year a few years ago. Yeah. But San Francisco. A $110,000 job there is equivalent to a $63,000 job in Austin, TX, or a $64,000 job in Atlanta, GA. Cost of living wise. True. He couldn't afford to buy a house in a decent neighborhood. But that's nothing to sneeze at. As a single guy girl, you can live pretty well off of $110K in and around SF. An emotionally vulnerable young woman who was all over me, making a bad decision by doing so. Teenaged me was pretty much saturated in hormones. But I bit down. Told her she was pretty but no. Left the party and kicked myself all the way home. Then she went to bed with some other asshole. My dog when she begs for food : see Monday human. I had a rough day. When she wanted me back. Yeah. But in my case it was fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 3 times, shame on you again. Said no to pills for the first time like 8 months ago. That was really ducking tough. Still clean though. Wow. Thanks for all the kind words guys. Blows my mind how wonderful complete strangers can be. As a college student paying my way through college with 2 part-time jobs, my grandparents offered to pay off my college. Now this is a very large amount of money. They offered me around $50,000. That I would of course pay back over time. It seems like an extremely generous gesture. But my grandparents are downright evil and will hang this over my head for the rest of my life. It's hard to summarize their wickedness. But they are very manipulative and demanding. Edit, the worst part is, even if I take the money and they were to pass away, I would have to pay everything back to my aunt, who is just as bad if not worse than them. Everything my grandparents own. Money, land, Will all go to my aunt when they pass away because of her manipulative ways and down talking my father and my entire family. I had to tell my marching band director in high school no when he asked if I was actually going to our every other year parade at Disney World. My family always struggled growing up but we couldn't afford it. The part that made it especially hard on me is that I already promised him that I could go because an aunt of mine told me she would pay my way. I was a freshman in high school and felt horrible about it. I felt like I lied to this man, who was a fantastic director. The room and flight had deposits put down already so the program lost money on me. They had to adjust the marching plans to cover the hole I created. All of my friends were going and teased me about not going. I felt like the scum of the school and blamed my aunt who never sent the money. Until she called and asked how the trip went. She had sent a check to me. My mom checked the mail, opened the letter to me, and then cashed the check and hid the letter. We were always broke and she said she used it for groceries but I've never believed that. Her 2 carton a week cigarette addiction and my dad's roll a week snuff addiction never suffered. But money sent specifically for me for the one fun trip I had an opportunity for certainly did. I still resent her to this day for that. Edit in. Thank you for the gold. Kind stranger. Getting every dog in the world. Someday I will own many acres of land and say yes to all the dogs and cats. Edit holy moly I got gold. Thank you kind stranger. I've only been on Reddit a few weeks and this is my first gold. I'm honored. Every Steam sale ever. Ratchet pussy. You have more willpower than Juicy J. When you're breaking up with someone and they say but don't you love me? In tears. That blows. When my ex broke up with me out of the blue because he didn't love me anymore. He cried far more than I did for this reason. He said hurting me by telling me his feelings for me just went away was the hardest thing he had ever had to do. After a while I just felt really awkward because he was still sobbing uncontrollably and I had stopped crying and was trying to lighten the mood. It was the only time I had ever seen him show emotion. Weird night. 11 years ago. When I was 17. In Chicago for a concert with my older sister. We were hanging out in the mall before the show and some older guy approaches me and says, "You like video games?" Huh. I was wearing a Zelda t-shirt. Apparently he owned a game software company developing a game targeted at girls. And he wanted some testers. I lived in MN at the time. So I couldn't participate. But being paid to play games would have been magical. Also, before anyone suggests anything, he gave me a business card and looked him up online. He was legit. Going to my dream school. RISD is really hard to get into, one of the best art schools in the US, and I was so psyched I got accepted. But I couldn't exactly afford to be $220,000 in debt when I graduated with a graphic design degree. I have the girl of my dreams naked in her own apartment. We're passing around a bottle. Getting sloshed. We're working our way up to duck for hours. It gets to that point and I have no condom. She has no condom. She has no condom in her own place. I said no to kids and STDs. Not that she had either. But you never know. I'm a man, not a pen 15. You can capitalize that she didn't have a condom in her own place, but this is still on you. Going over to an attractive person's house to drink. You should have had a condom in every pocket and one taped behind your gonads so that no matter the position you find yourself in when the time comes, there is a condom within reach of your free hand. So my nephew got taken away by child services. We live in TX, he lives in Inn. We went through 3 in social workers while he went through 3 fosters. We finally got to the background check and home visit with our local social worker. She gives us the notes and progress reports from the child psychologist. Through the reports, he went from not being potty trained, calling everyone mommy, and being considered developmentally challenged with the first 2 fosters to potty trained, knowing his ABCs, and calling his 3rd foster parents mommy and daddy. These parents expressed interest in adopting him. He thought my still a stranger and was terrified of my Phil. even calling him monster. My wife and I both agreed the best thing for him was to stay with his fosters and not uproot him and risk destroying all the progress he made. Also getting him out of the family and a shot at a normal stable life. One of the hardest decisions we've ever made, but I don't regret it one bit. Sex. She was very drunk. And I was tipsy. I'd wanted to duck her for years, but instead I went with my gut. Said no. Got her to her place safe and went home. Later she told me that her ex showed up that night. They did it. Then got into a brawl with cops called. He didn't want her back. Just sex. Read, she called her ex because you left. Or threesome with a girl I really loved and her friend. I had done it before with other girlfriends. I have had threesomes with girlfriends before, and every time it ended up ending the relationship. Not necessarily that day or the next. But many women have a really hard time seeing their boyfriends pen 15 inside another woman. They were both drunk as hell and I was only slightly buzzed. I wouldn't take advantage of that situation. 2 reasons to not do it. But it was extremely hard to not do it. A cigarette. After smoking roughly 100,000 of them. A BJ. Really wanted it but had to get to work. A diamond. Because it's a hard substance. Also because I wasn't ready to marry her. Boy howdy, that was awkward. My parents thought that it might be too expensive and that I might drive them to debt if I went to India for college. vs. staying in a shitty college in Nepal, as we had no idea at the time how expensive it might be. Coming from an extremely rural area and without prior knowledge of fees, lifestyle in the city etc. I really didn't have that much guidance nor information to explain my parents. I didn't have any outside help at that time. So thought I might have to rely on parents big time and that they might be quite right. I said no to my parents about going to college in Nepal. Very inexpensive and affordable but for a poor quality education, and went to college in India. 2 MS degrees later. I am where I am. Happy. And parents are happy I did it too. Didn't drive them to debt, so many people helped me along the way. Thank you all, and this world turned out to be an amazing place. Those of you who debate about going to college for financial hardship. If there is a will, there is a way. Sorry dad and mom. But I had to say no to you at the time. Which is probably the only time I said that to you. At McDonald's. The drive-thru girl asked if I wanted an apple pie with my order. But I didn't have an extra dollar lying around. It just wasn't meant to be. Packing a lip after I quit. All of my friends still dip but I use my e-cig. I'd heal for a dip but I don't want cancer. Best offer was to Russian girls. 1 hotel room. The week after I married. I can't say it was hard to say no to. But I figured the timing was thanks to Murphy and his law. It was probably also a scam or something.